In our time, relationships have increasingly become subject to rigid expectations, bound by numbers, timelines, and social scripts. Among the most questioned of these relationships are those where an age difference exists. People often rush to judge such bonds, assuming imbalance, manipulation, or immaturity. But human connection isn't built on age alone. It's built on resonance, on shared values, emotional depth, intellectual compatibility, and above all, mutual respect. Today, we'll explore a concept that challenges conventional thinking. What does it mean when someone falls in love with you, even with the age difference? What does that reveal about human psychology, responsibility, and the ethical frameworks that make such love not only possible, but profound? This is not a defense of romantic impulsivity. It is an examination of maturity, meaning, and the timeless structures of connection that go beyond the superficial metrics we often mistake for truth. Let's begin. Love, as we so often misunderstand it, is frequently reduced to superficial parameters: shared age, cultural backgrounds, educational similarity, or economic alignment. But the core architecture of love, especially enduring and meaningful love, is rooted in something far deeper than these variables. It is grounded in the fundamental structures of human nature and the psychology of connection, which operate below the level of societal conventions. When a person falls in love across an age divide, this often reveals not a deviation from healthy connection, but rather a deeper alignment with what truly binds human beings: shared vulnerability, reciprocal recognition, and the profound resonance of values and aspirations. To understand why love transcends age in some cases, we must begin with the human need for connection. From infancy, the psyche is wired to seek attachment, first for survival, later for emotional regulation, and eventually for meaning. This attachment is not blind, it is selective. We form bonds with those who mirror our emotions, reflect our deepest questions, and stand as witnesses to our transformation. These functions are not contingent on age, but on psychological depth and emotional intelligence. In many cases, the attraction between individuals of different ages emerges from a psychological complementarity. An older person might possess the calm, wisdom, and vision that a younger partner finds grounding. Meanwhile, the younger individual may offer vitality, curiosity, and a sense of renewal that enlivens the older partner's worldview. These are not mere aesthetic or physical exchanges. They are emotional and existential. They form what psychologists call a dyadic system, where each person becomes an anchor and a mirror for the other's growth. When a person falls in love with someone older or younger, they often aren't drawn simply to the age itself, but to what that age represents psychologically. A younger individual might find in an older partner a sense of safety, guidance, and intellectual stimulation rarely found among peers. The older individual might find in the younger partner an invitation to revisit a more open, less cynical way of experiencing the world, a rekindling of emotional sensitivity and idealism. In this way, the age difference becomes a symbol of psychological function, not a sign of dysfunction. It's important to note that these relationships don't emerge in a vacuum. Society conditions us with norms that make age gap relationships appear inherently suspicious or imbalanced. This bias often stems not from psychological science, but from moral panics, poorly understood power dynamics, or misreadings of historical cases where exploitation did indeed occur. However, the presence of potential abuse in some age gap relationships does not invalidate the legitimacy of those built on mutual understanding and respect. Human psychology does not function on one-size-fits-all frameworks. It responds to depth, presence, truth, and character. Empirical psychological studies have also begun to confirm that age gap relationships can be as satisfying or even more satisfying than age-similar ones, provided both individuals share core values and emotional maturity. The operative word here is maturity, not age. A person can be 25 and emotionally sound, or 45 and emotionally evasive. What matters is the individual's capacity for empathy, for honest self-reflection, and for commitment. These capacities define the psychological terrain of love far more than birthdays ever could. Now, the reason such a love can develop is that we are fundamentally narrative creatures. We seek meaning in our experiences and in our relationships. We long for others to see us not just as we are today, but as we are becoming, and as we have been. When someone truly sees your story, holds space for it, and wants to participate in its next chapters, that gesture evokes profound affection. If that person happens to be older or younger, their age becomes contextual, not central. Moreover, shared values, perhaps the most critical element of sustainable love, cut across age lines. Two people who both value integrity, kindness, purpose, and growth will have a far stronger foundation than two people of the same age, whose worldviews are misaligned. Age tells us when someone was born. Values tell us how someone sees the world. It is the latter that determines whether intimacy can evolve into real partnership. Attachment theory further supports this. According to its core insights, people seek secure attachment figures, those who are available, responsive, and attuned. Such attributes are rare at any age and incredibly powerful when found. If an older person embodies those characteristics, the younger partner may feel deeply drawn, not because they are seeking a parent figure, but because they are recognizing the psychological safety that allows love to flourish. Likewise, the older partner might feel drawn to the younger's authenticity, rawness, and willingness to connect, traits often lost in the guardedness of midlife relationships. Another important point to consider is that when someone falls in love across an age gap, they are often exercising a higher form of discernment than mere attraction. They are identifying something eternal in the other person, something that speaks to their aspirations, not just their need. It is a form of emotional intelligence to recognize qualities in another person that bring out your best self, that challenge your mind, and that calm your nervous system. These things are rare and invaluable, and their appearance should not be dismissed because of a number on a birth certificate. We live in a time where psychological compatibility should be elevated above chronological similarity. Human nature, after all, is not mathematical. It is spiritual, emotional, and deeply idiosyncratic. We do not connect because we are the same age. We connect because we recognize each other, because we find in the other a reflection of who we are and who we hope to become. This is the foundation of love that is real, that endures, and that evolves. Age may be noted, but it is not decisive. What matters always is whether two souls are capable of meeting honestly, ethically, and wholeheartedly in the space between them. Age, in both its biological and cultural forms, plays a powerful yet often misunderstood role in how we perceive relationships. It carries biological realities, such as fertility, energy levels, or life stage differences, but it also carries immense cultural weight, shaped by social norms, historical taboos, and collective psychological narratives. When someone falls in love across an age gap, the friction that arises is not always biological. More often, it is cultural. To understand why such relationships provoke discomfort or debate, we must separate the actual physiological implications of age from the interpretations societies have built around them. Biologically, age marks certain undeniable phases. The body changes, hormonal patterns shift, cognitive functions mature and, at times, decline. These changes impact the way individuals interact with the world and with one another. For example, an individual in their 20s is often physically primed for exploration, risk-taking, and identity formation. Someone in their 40s or 50s may be in a phase of consolidation, seeking stability, legacy, and refined meaning. These differing life stages can influence priorities in a relationship. However, this doesn't automatically make relationships across these stages incompatible. Rather, it calls for conscious awareness of each partner's stage and clarity about intentions. What is often overlooked is that maturity does not unfold at a uniform rate. Biological age is only a general indicator of developmental position, but it does not account for individual temperament, experience, or emotional growth. One person may arrive at emotional maturity through hardship, introspection, or unique life circumstances far earlier than their peers. Another may remain developmentally stagnant well into middle age. This variance is key when assessing compatibility between people of different ages. The assumption that two people close in age are therefore more compatible is flawed. Compatibility emerges from psychological attunement, not statistical proximity. Now consider age as a cultural construct. Every society assigns meaning to numbers. A 30-year-old dating a 50-year-old may be viewed differently in one culture versus another. Western societies, particularly in the modern era, have developed a hyper-focus on equality, often equating it with sameness. As a result, any difference in age is sometimes interpreted as an imbalance in power, experience, or social value. But this interpretation is shaped by ideology, not psychology. Many traditional cultures have long accepted age difference relationships as natural or even advantageous. The younger partner learns, the older partner leads, and both grow through asymmetrical but not unequal roles. In the modern West, age gaps often carry a negative moral connotation. They're viewed through the lens of exploitation, manipulation, or arrested development. And while these concerns are valid in certain cases, particularly where maturity or consent is in question, they cannot be applied indiscriminately to all such relationships. Just because power imbalances are possible doesn't mean they are inevitable. A responsible relationship, regardless of age difference, is defined not by numerical symmetry, but by transparency, agency, and mutual respect. To claim otherwise is to reduce human relationships to mathematical equations, ignoring the complexities of love, character, and intent. What makes age gap relationships interesting and at times challenging is that they force us to confront the conflict between biology and culture. Biologically, age may bring about different energies, reproductive timelines, or health considerations. Culturally, age differences are often seen as breaches in expected relational form. The tension between these two interpretations generates internal and external pressure for couples who deviate from the norm. Their task, then, is not just to love, but to navigate a world that often reads their relationship through a lens of suspicion rather than curiosity. Another common misunderstanding is that age difference relationships are inherently one-sided. For instance, people often assume the younger person is gaining mentorship, protection, or security, while the older is gaining vitality, beauty, or control. This view is reductive and ignores the multidimensionality of human connection. In reality, each individual brings unique psychological and emotional assets that may have little to do with age. The younger person may carry a deeper philosophical outlook or emotional wisdom, while the older may exhibit openness, playfulness, or vulnerability. These traits don't distribute neatly along age lines. Age also plays into how society frames narratives around desirability and worth. Particularly in media and social discourse, youth is often glamorized. This creates a distorted value system in which love across age lines is interpreted as desperation or vanity, rather than the possible outcome of genuine psychological resonance. When an older person loves a younger one, or vice versa, it challenges the prevailing myth that value and desirability are locked to a certain life phase. Instead, it proposes that meaning and love can be found across the continuum of human experience. There is also a philosophical layer to consider. Age, while real in its biological sense, is ultimately linear time, a measure of how many rotations a person has made around the sun. Yet human consciousness doesn't always move linearly. Spiritually and emotionally, people grow in unpredictable rhythms. An individual may feel older than their years or younger than their chronological age, depending on their life journey, their psychological openness, and their existential concerns. Love, when it is real, often recognizes this inner time more than the outer one. In any relationship where age difference exists, the key lies in intention and awareness. If both individuals understand the implications of their respective stages in life, if they can speak honestly about needs, goals, and limitations, then the relationship can be one of profound mutual growth. But when such awareness is lacking, or when one partner enters the relationship to fulfill a fantasy or avoid reality, then the age gap may amplify existing dysfunction. As with any other relationship, the health of the connection depends not on outer variables, but on the depth of the internal dialogue shared between the two. In conclusion, age should be neither dismissed nor deified. It matters in certain biological ways, but it should not overshadow the deeper truths of human connection. It is a signal, not a sentence. When we judge relationships by age alone, we do violence to the complexity of love and the dignity of those who find each other across generational lines. The challenge and opportunity is to move beyond fear, beyond convention, and toward a more nuanced understanding of how people grow, connect, and truly see each other. But when such awareness is lacking, or when one partner enters the relationship to fulfill a fantasy or avoid reality, then the age gap may amplify existing dysfunction. As with any other relationship, the health of the connection depends not on outer variables, but on the depth of the internal dialogue shared between the two. In conclusion, age should be neither dismissed nor deified. It matters in certain biological ways, but it should not overshadow the deeper truths of human connection. It is a signal, not a sentence. When we judge relationships by age alone, we do violence to the complexity of love and the dignity of those who find each other across generational lines. The challenge and opportunity is to move beyond fear, beyond convention, and toward a more nuanced understanding of how people grow, connect, and truly see each other. People are drawn to one another for different reasons, often precisely because they are not the same. In age gap relationships, this dynamic becomes even more visible. One person may bring a broader historical or professional lens, shaped by decades of experience, while the other may offer fresh perspective, adaptability, or unjaded optimism. These differences are not flaws, they are functions, but their benefits are only activated through mutual respect and conscious recognition. Respect in this context does not mean blind admiration or deference. It means a commitment to seeing the other person as a full human being capable of insight, agency, and contribution, regardless of their age. The older partner must resist the temptation to dominate through authority or patronizing instruction. The younger must avoid either idolizing or infantilizing the older. The success of the relationship depends on the ability of both individuals to meet each other not at the same life stage, but at the same level of emotional seriousness. Role differentiation becomes essential in this process. Unlike relationships that rest on symmetry, age gap partnerships often thrive when each partner understands the specific psychological and emotional roles they naturally adopt within the relationship, and when those roles are respected, not resisted. One partner may be more of a mentor or guide, while the other may be more exploratory or growth-oriented. This doesn't mean one is superior. It means they play different complementary roles in the ecosystem of the relationship. Problems arise when these roles are either denied or abused. One of the dangers in an age gap relationship is the possibility of unbalanced power dynamics. The older person may wield more influence, socially, financially, or emotionally, and if unchecked, this can lead to coercion or dependence. But this is not a given. Power in its healthy form is not dominance. It is responsibility. The more life experience, resources, or influence one partner has, the more responsibility they carry to ensure that the relationship remains grounded in consent, collaboration, and ethical clarity. This is not about diminishing oneself to equalize the field, but about using one's strength to build rather than to bend. Similarly, the younger partner must also understand their own influence. Youth, beauty, novelty, emotional openness, these are forms of power too, often underestimated in their social effect. If wielded unconsciously or manipulatively, they can create confusion or false dependency in the relationship. But when honored with maturity and self-awareness, these traits can revitalize the older partner and bring real depth to the connection. Again, the key is not to pretend equality in every domain, but to engage differences ethically and constructively. Communication, as always, becomes the core mechanism through which these roles and respects are negotiated. It is not enough to simply feel love. In age gap relationships, clarity must be spoken aloud. Expectations, boundaries, life goals, all must be addressed with transparency and a willingness to listen across difference. It is through such deliberate communication that mutual respect becomes not just a sentiment, but a structure. Without it, unspoken assumptions can take root, and the relationship may fall prey to projection, resentment, or infantilization. Moreover, the cultural narrative around age gap relationships often adds pressure that can either distort or strengthen the couple's internal dynamics. Social scrutiny, judgment, or even mockery may arise, especially if the roles in the relationship are not clearly understood by outsiders. In these cases, it becomes even more important for the couple to have internally aligned values and clearly differentiated but respected roles. When the relationship is rooted in mutual recognition and ethical self-awareness, external judgment loses much of its power. But when internal confusion or unresolved power struggles exist, those outside judgments can exacerbate fractures. A well-functioning age gap relationship demonstrates that respect is not about leveling every difference, but about integrating them. It's about saying, you are different from me in age, perhaps in background or life phase, but I see the value in that difference and I honor what you bring. This type of relational integrity transcends popular notions of fairness, which often mistake equality for sameness. Real fairness in love is the honest division of emotional labor, responsibility, and influence in ways that reflect each person's capabilities and needs. And finally, role differentiation does not mean fixed or static identity within the relationship. A younger partner may grow into greater leadership over time, while the older may become more emotionally dependent or creatively inspired by the energy of the other. These roles can evolve and must if the relationship is to thrive across years. The respect required is not just for the present version of the partner, but for who they are becoming. Love, in this sense, is not just the acceptance of the other, but a commitment to witnessing and supporting their transformation. In conclusion, age gap relationships are not inherently unbalanced, nor inherently profound. Their depth or dysfunction depends largely on whether both partners understand the nature of their differences, the roles they inhabit, and the moral responsibility that comes with influence. Mutual respect, then, is not an abstract ideal. It is the practical foundation that allows difference to serve love rather than destroy it. When each partner can look at the other and say, "I see what you bring, and I trust how you hold it," then the relationship has moved beyond convention and entered the realm of true emotional maturity. In any relationship, responsibility and freedom are not opposing forces, but interdependent elements. One allows for the other to thrive. This becomes especially crucial in asymmetrical relationships, such as those with a significant age gap, where the natural differences between individuals demand a higher level of ethical awareness. The mere presence of asymmetry does not imply exploitation, but it does place an ethical burden on both individuals to engage with the relationship consciously and responsibly. Love that grows between two people of different ages can only remain stable and authentic when it is supported by a shared commitment to responsibility, a respect for freedom, and an understanding of what it means to act ethically in love. Responsibility in this context is not limited to practical duties. It is, more profoundly, the act of recognizing how your presence, decisions, and influence affect the other person. The older partner may hold more experience, social power, or emotional knowledge. The younger partner may bring openness, energy, or aspiration. But regardless of what each person brings, the question that must constantly be asked is, what do I owe this other person, given the weight and scope of my influence in their life? This question is not about guilt or obligation. It is about moral seriousness. A relationship becomes sustainable when both partners recognize that love is not just a feeling, but a responsibility toward the development and dignity of another human being. Freedom, too, must be rightly understood. It is not the freedom to do whatever one pleases, regardless of the consequences. It is the freedom to act in alignment with one's values and to foster that same autonomy in the other. Ethical love does not control or confine. It protects and nurtures the space in which the other can grow. In asymmetrical relationships, this freedom must be intentionally protected. The older individual must resist any temptation to dominate the relationship with their preferences or past experiences. Instead, they must create room for the younger partner to explore their own identity, even if that journey leads to disagreement, discomfort, or unexpected growth. At the same time, the younger partner must approach their freedom with care. It is not simply about resisting influence, but about knowing what they want and understanding the implications of their choices. Freedom is not rebellion, it is ownership. The younger individual must not allow admiration, dependency, or idealization to override their sense of self. Ethical love requires that both parties can stand on their own, even as they choose to walk forward together. This level of maturity, especially important in asymmetrical relationships, is what ensures that love does not collapse into possession or projection. Love, in its ethical form, is a balancing act between offering oneself and preserving the autonomy of the other. The danger in age gap relationships is not that they involve difference, but that one partner may unconsciously assume a parent-child dynamic. This can happen subtly through guidance that becomes control or dependence that becomes expectation. The only way to avoid this is to remain radically honest about motivations and to foster a continuous dialogue around boundaries, desires, and fears. Responsibility here means becoming aware of how power operates, not just externally. It's recognizing the small shifts where influence becomes pressure, where care becomes control. Ethical love also demands future-mindedness. It is not simply about how the relationship feels in the moment, but about how it will evolve over time. For example, if the older partner is significantly ahead in life stages, retirement, health concerns, end-of-life planning, there must be a shared conversation about what that means for the younger individual. Avoiding these conversations out of discomfort or fear is not responsible. Pretending that love alone will override future realities is not ethical. A responsible partner does not burden the other with silent expectations or withheld truths. Instead, they engage with these realities transparently, even if it threatens the comfort of the present. This does not mean that asymmetrical relationships are doomed to imbalance or tragedy. On the contrary, when responsibility and freedom are embraced as core principles, such relationships often demonstrate a depth that more even relationships sometimes lack. The very awareness of difference forces a higher level of communication, reflection, and intentionality. When people love across a divide, be it age, culture, or experience, they must build bridges deliberately. These bridges, when built with care, can be far stronger than those formed through assumed similarity. Love is not just about compatibility. It is about covenant, a mutual agreement, not in a legal sense, but in an emotional and ethical one, that says, I will act in your interest even when it challenges my own comfort. I will not take advantage of your admiration, your need, or your trust. In asymmetrical relationships, this covenant must be explicit. Each partner must know what the other is offering and requiring. It is not about guarding against betrayal alone. It is about safeguarding the dignity of the bond itself. Furthermore, responsibility in such relationships includes responsibility to oneself. Neither partner should sacrifice their core identity to maintain the illusion of harmony. The older partner must not become overly self-sacrificing out of guilt or fear of judgment. The younger must not silence their voice to keep peace or avoid abandonment. True love allows both to bring their full selves into the relationship, even the parts that are inconvenient, changing, or uncertain. In doing so, the relationship becomes not a form of escape, but a crucible for transformation. Ultimately, ethical love in asymmetrical relationships is not about pretending the age difference doesn't matter. It's about allowing it to matter in the right way by being aware of how it affects roles, perception, and shared futures, without allowing it to define or diminish the relationship. It is the choice to love, not blindly, but with eyes open, not out of need, but out of purpose, and not for what the other person can give, but for who they become in your presence and who you become in theirs. When love is approached this way, with seriousness, clarity, and moral integrity, it can rise above social prejudice and personal insecurity. It becomes a space not only of affection, but of genuine human development. That is what makes such love not only valid, but potentially extraordinary. In the end, love does not ask for symmetry, it asks for sincerity. It does not demand sameness, it calls for understanding. When two people meet across the distance of years and still choose to see each other clearly, to hold each other responsibly, and to grow together with intention, That is not a mistake. That is not confusion. That is a form of courage. The age difference may be visible to the world, but what truly matters is the invisible work of trust, of ethics, of respect that holds that love in place.